Okay, we are doing Marx theory of IR. Marx theory of IR is related to Marx's view of world. What is his view of world? In the first place, he looks at everything at a global stage, not at the national stage. And he looks at things historically. Looks at things historically. Okay. And then he viewed the world in terms of spread of capitalism and its consequences. So this is the way he looked at the world. How did he look at a society or a state? He looked at the state in terms of classes. Okay. So, Marxian view is like this. A state or a nation. State. You have classes. Capitalists, laborers, capitalists, laborers, capitalists, laborers. And capitalists across the world are connected. And laborers across the world should be connected. They are connected or should be connected. Essentially, this is about classes. So you can call this state 1, state 2, state 3, or nation 1, nation 2, nation 3. So Marx looked at a state or a society or a nation in terms of classes, and classes which are antagonistic to each other and they are in conflict. Okay. And in this equation, in this relationship, of course, the way he looked at the world is that this is not a capitalist society to begin with, then it will be capitalism soon. So pre-capitalist state will become capitalist. So like this, capitalism will spread. This is the picture he had of globalization. Globalization is the spread of capitalist system across the states and the nations. Okay. And he believed that after capitalism, there would be socialism, and then in the end, communism. Okay. So in this relationship, what is the idea of the nation? Okay. The idea of the nation is like this. Nation works as per the interests of the classes. So nation works as per the interests of the classes. So nation or a state is an expression of the will of the capitalist classes. So Marx looked at in terms of economy, in terms of classes and class conflict. Okay. So the crucial thing in this is nations are not treated independently, are not treated independently. Okay. So that is a problem. Nation is not taken as an independent entity in search of security or in search of power, because nation is simply a tool in the hands of the ruling classes. Okay. So this is a very big problem in Marxian theory of international relations, because IR theory focuses on nations, giving primacy to nations, whereas in Marxian theory, nation is not given that level of independence that it deserves. It's all about classes and class conflict. Okay. For example, how can you explain war in terms of nations? Why war? Okay. If only class struggle is real, only if the class struggle is real, okay. If classes are connected across, then how do you explain international conflict and war? Okay. So that is the problem that Marxist theory of international relations faced. Okay. So that is why, to a committed socialist, nation is not an important entity at all. Class is an entity. So during World War I, when nations are going for a war, and the socialists in those respective countries agreed for war, Lenin was very, very unhappy. Lenin thought it was a betrayal of socialist cause. Take for example, Lenin said, the conduct of the leaders of the German Social Democratic Party of the Second International, okay, who have voted the war budget, who repeat the bourgeoisie chauvinistic phrases of the Prussian Junkers and of the bourgeoisie, is a direct betrayal of socialism. So socialists are supposed to be only class conscious, only class conflict is real. Those who supported World War I, Lenin says it is a betrayal of socialism. And Kenneth Waltz says, Marxism can't explain war. After all, nations are not taken as a really powerful independent entities with their own insecurity and power issues. And Waltz says, as socialism spreads, peace will spread. And war, according to Marxian thinking, is only between capitalist countries. But we know all those things turned out to be wrong. So, missing nationalism as a very, very powerful identity, Marx missed one very important aspect of international relations. Okay. But how would Marx look at things like freedom struggle? Okay. But Marx would look at freedom struggle like this. Marx would support freedom struggle. Why is it so? Because he thought that nations should be free as a part of creating a better world. For example, as long as the Germans help, we Germans help, that is we, the Germans help, therefore to oppress the Polish nation. As long as a part of Poland remains chained to Prussia, as long as we ourselves remain chained to Russia, we shall be unable to radically break patriarchal and feudal absolutism in our own realm. The re-establishment of democratic Poland is the most essential condition for the reconstruction of a democratic Germany. So this he wrote in the Polish person before the Frankfurt Assembly. So a nation should not chain the other nation, should not suppress, should not enslave. And if this nation is enslaving this, then laborers of this nation should oppose. The working classes of this nation should express solidarity with the working classes of this nation and also support the national independence. So, Marx was for freedom struggle, though he didn't take nation as an important identity. Because he believed this is a part of improving a society, improving the world. Okay. So, for example, Marx praised British working class for opposing plans for British assistance to American South during the US Civil War. Okay. British assistance to American South was to suppress slave revolt. So working classes opposed that. They were against slavery, and so they didn't want the British to support American South. So this showed that Marx wanted working class solidarity across nations. So Marx wanted working class solidarity across nations, and then the freedom struggle. Okay. And opposed war between the nations. Okay. And next, in general, how he linked class war and national oppression. Marx equated the end of class struggle is also the end of enslavement of nations. The victory of the proletariat over the bourgeoisie is therefore at the same time the liberation signal of all oppressed nations. So when the proletariat wins, there won't be any oppression of nations also. So these two are connected. So classes are connected to nations too. Class exploitation connected to national exploitation. Then in proportion as the exploitation of one individual by another is put to an end, exploitation of one individual, the exploitation of one nation by another will be put to an end. When individual exploitation ends, national exploitation also will end. In proportion as the antagonism between the classes within the nation vanishes, the hostility of one nation to another will come to an end. And so it means if class exploitation ends, national oppression also will end. Okay. And in fact, Engels goes a step further when he says that proletarians are by nature devoid of national prejudices and their whole outlook and movement are essentially humanitarian and anti-national. So he says that if socialist revolution comes and the proletarian become powerful, they won't have this national sentiment at all. They will be anti-national and humanitarian. I like this sentence. Anti-nationalism and humanitarianism are used in one sentence by Engels. Okay. Describing nationalism is very narrow. So, problem with Marxian theory is that they expected end to exploitation at all levels at the same time. Okay. And then they said it would soon come. So he said large-scale capitalist industry by creating the world market established a universal interdependence of nations. So Marx says that capitalism is spreading and universal interdependence is happening. And capitalism created a world in its own image. So capitalism is spreading. Capitalism is spreading, and then when capitalism spreads, it will also lead to spread of socialism. This will also lead to peace. Okay, so one day all will have peace. So in this theory, so many debates about nations search for power, search for glory, search for security, all those things are missed. So missing without having anything much to say on most important debates of realism. Okay, so by not acknowledging nation as a one independent, powerful entity on its own,